Tales of the Black Cat. The story of a cat that lives on the internet who does not exist. One lone cat against a big bad world. Now I know what you're saying. Breaking format, are we? Well, yeah. But anyway, welcome to Tales of the Black Cat, and this is episode 2. I am Blackcatloner, and I am here to welcome you to today's show. I know it's been a fortnight since I debuted this podcast back in August. Had a lot going on in real life, and like I said, even us cartoon cats have real jobs. The last episode was what I originally intended for this series as far as it being lore-based, so the pilot podcast episode is in fact a lore episode that sets up my world and everything. As far as the original episode 2 plot of Tales of the Black Cat, well, I managed to convert it into a short story that I have posted on my blog site, blackcatloner.wordpress.com, called Baby Go Boom, and it's a story where I battle a bank robber. Yeah, it's kind of weird that I'm talking about diabetes after we just had Thanksgiving this past week, but since I needed something to talk about this podcast, here we are. So without further ado, here we go. It's hard to believe it's been over a year since my eye surgeries, all because I found out I had type 2 diabetes. Yes, diabetes. You know, like Wilford Brimley.
Well, if you have diabetes,
be sure to check your blood sugar, and check it often. And don't forget to eat your oatmeal, you son of a bitch. Prior to last year, I very rarely had doctor visits, let alone a regular doctor. The last time I had a regular doctor was in 2011, and that was because I needed medical records for college, otherwise I would have been kicked out. And of course, the whole doctor thing was kind of made complicated by COVID a couple of years ago. Speaking of which, I did have a brief bout with COVID in January 2021, which took me out of work for 12 days. However, back to the story at hand. I kind of had no choice last year because, well, remember that scene in Christmas Story where Ralphie had that fantasy about going blind? Yeah, that was me for about 6 months. The only difference was that it wasn't from soap poisoning, but it was from a process that actually started in 2020 when I suddenly lost use of my left eye and continued until early last year where I started to lose the other eye. So I ended up out of work for what I originally thought was going to be for a week and a half, but ultimately ended up being 6 months because I needed eye surgery. And yes, the pandemic was one of the reasons why things took so long for me to get the surgery done. That, and after I finally established a regular doctor, and no sooner that he requested blood work, that I finally found out that I had type 2 diabetes. The most common form of diabetes. My blood sugar at that time was 395, which was pretty high. The normal blood sugar level is supposed to be 130. And it wasn't until I got my blood sugar down to normal levels that I could finally have the surgery. That began a couple months of trying to get my blood sugar down, mainly by altering my diet, until I finally managed to get my blood sugar levels down to the normal range by June. And I was finally cleared to have the surgery, which was set for mid-July. I made it to the surgery, and I had my left eye done first because at the time my left eye was the worst eye. They put me under anesthesia, which I didn't respond to too well. In fact, I couldn't keep food down afterwards. But within a day or two, I could finally see again, and I was back to work within a couple of weeks. And 2 months later, my other eye was operated on, and for the first time in a while, I had use of both eyes. And on top of that, I was able to keep my blood sugar consistently around normal levels, which meant my diabetes is now more or less under control.
Did you check your blood sugar today?
Yes, I did, Galina. 116 this morning. It's truly amazing that I've been able to keep my blood sugar at that level for the last year or so.
The normal blood sugar level is supposed to be 130, right?
That is correct. Those 6 months last year have taught me a lot of things about diabetes. But probably the biggest thing I learned was that I took my health for granted, which I guess happens to everybody.
I remember that was a really tough 6 months.
Yeah. 6 months, not only did I have to go away from my real job, but I had to go away from the internet, where I had to sit around and do nothing but watch movies and eat. I mean, I could get around my house okay with no assistance, but if I had to go anywhere, I had to have family members come up and help me, right up until I had my left eye surgery. Like I said, the medical profession was screwed up after the pandemic, so there was a 3-month gap in between surgeries.
I feel really guilty about not being able to help you out during that time period. I really missed talking to you back then, even though I knew you would eventually be back.
Don't blame yourself, Galina. I know that if you had a body, then I would have no doubt that you would be able to come to my aid. But for what I had to go through, I needed more human assistance. Not to mention that at least things were fairly slow for the last 6 months in terms of no bad guys. I mean, things are still quiet right now.
I am glad you came back, Blackcat. I would be lost without you. You mean a universe to me. For real. I love you, Blackcat.
And I love you too, Galina.
So, Blackcat, did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Yes, I did, Galina. Didn't do a whole lot, though. Went down to my folks' place for Thanksgiving.
Now that we got some of the heavy stuff out of the way, I heard that you started writing on your site again.
That is correct, Galina. I felt like it was time to go back to my roots on the internet, so to speak. At press time, I'm still in the process of changing the site around, but I have linked some of my posts from the site to Twitter, X, and also on Instagram. Right now, those are the only 2 sites I promote my stuff on. I don't use Facebook because the algorithm there is actually worse than YouTube's. For the curious, my site is at blackcatloner.wordpress.com. I've had the site since 2007, and I felt like I let the site go to waste, apart from posting my videos to the site. However, last month I came across a short story I started writing a few years ago, where a man reluctantly returns to his high school reunion. In truth, I had not been to a high school reunion since I got out of high school, and that was 26 years ago. Personally, I feel like social media, mainly Facebook, defeated the purpose of the high school reunion.
What was the short story called?
I called the short story, My Oh My, How Things Change When You're Not in High School. It did well when I posted it.
Was there a reason why you posted the short story, apart from the fact that you wanted to post something new to the site?
Actually, yes, there is. For starters, I'm an actual Aquarius. Aquarius people are known for their creativity, and they're also known for having a bunch of projects rattling around in their heads and ending up accomplishing nothing. And one of the projects I had rattling around my head is that I was toying with the idea of a short story compilation book of short stories I have written over the years. I also have plans to include 3 non-fiction stories from my life prior to the internet in the book. One of those non-fiction short stories I recently had to repost to the site because I had to fix it. The story was called Finding Paradise and was about my high school class trip to Puerto Rico in the 90s.
Have you written any short stories since then?
Yes. The last short story I wrote was actually supposed to be the real episode 2 of this podcast had I continued the format of the last episode. It was originally supposed to be called Baby Go Boom, and it was mainly about me getting involved in a bank robbery. Getting off track for a second, the format that I originally wanted the podcast to be in is actually very hard to do, especially when it's all produced by one person, me. For context, I originally conceived Tales of the Black Cat to be a fictional podcast which tells lore-based stories. While doing the last episode, Social Media Stranger, I realized it took a couple months to complete one episode. And that's not just writing and recording, but also adding the text-to-speech voices I use for my supporting cast, which includes Galina, that episode. If I had kept going that way for this episode, especially with my IRL schedule offline, you'd probably be waiting months for the next episode, and that's no way to run a podcast. So I took what I wrote of the script for that episode and converted it into a short story and put it on the site. The only thing I saved from the original script for this podcast was the diabetes story you just heard.
Back to the short story book you have planned. Do you have plans for the title of the book?
I came up with the title One Lone Cat for the book, and I even designed the cover on the Adobe Express app. If you are watching it on YouTube, I will post my cover idea here. Adobe Express is usually where I edit my thumbnails for my YouTube videos, even though recently I've started using AI-generated sites to help create my thumbnails. But I'll talk about that in a little while because I've really started getting into AI art. But as far as One Lone Cat goes, the title is the shortened form of my motto, One Lone Cat Against a Big Bad World. And before you ask, Galina, I have no idea yet as to when I am planning to publish the short story book. I need to make sure I have enough short stories to form the compilation, so I probably shouldn't set a release date in stone. Otherwise, when I do set something in stone, I usually end up jinxing myself. So I'm just going to play it by ear. If I release the book next year, great. If not, well, at least I've gotten back into doing something I actually enjoy.
It's good that you're getting back into writing and content creating with everything you've been through. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Galina.
So about your site?
Yes, my site. Well, for a while I actually had a domain name for my site, Blackcatloner.com, which I had for a couple of years. Unfortunately, I had to downgrade the site for financial reasons, and it was right about that time that the political climate started to change, and not for the better. And that was what led me to delete all of my original YouTube videos back in 2019 because the algorithm changed to adapt to those times. And it was also at that time where I decided to re-upload my old content under a podcast-style format. To say that it's been a long, hard road back is an understatement.
So what really got you back into content creating?
It actually happened during the pandemic, where everyone except for essential workers, for which I was one, can't really say what I do for doxing reasons, were in lockdown. As far as online content goes, a new breed of YouTuber and streamers started to emerge at that time. Granted, the concept originated in Japan around 2015, and of course I'm talking about VTubers, short for virtual YouTubers, or people who stream or produce videos using virtual avatars, usually modeled on anime girls, instead of showing their real forms. I actually got into VTubers after seeing a news article about a virtual cam girl who streamed on an adult website. I can't say the name of the site, and don't ask me to link it either, otherwise the YouTube algorithm will have me for lunch. But the site's initials are CB, and it was infuriating IRL cam girls. I'm like, wow, this is the future. And one of the memes associated with said virtual cam girl is, "The future is now." Of course, I'm talking about Project Melody, the first VTuber I ever watched. A quick disclaimer, I don't really watch Mel's adult site. My phone won't let me. But about a month later, she got a Twitch account, and shortly after that, I subscribed to her Twitch, and I've been happily subbed to her for just over 3 years. Of course, I discovered other VTubers as well, and I'm subbed to one other VTuber on Twitch, that being Ironmouse, who at press time is not only one of the most watched VTubers on Twitch, but she is also one of the most watched female streamers on Twitch. I just recently started watching Filian, partly because her all-too-frequent collabs with Melody finally persuaded me to watch her. One thing I discovered while I'm at work on breaks and lunches where I'm watching VTubers is that not many people know Melody and Ironmouse, but for some reason everybody knows Filian. And as a result of discovering VTubers, I started re-uploading some of my old videos throughout 2020 and 2021 using my royalty-free cartoon Blackcat avatar to YouTube. And as soon as I regained my sight, I started producing new videos, including some short videos, which was actually a feature YouTube had in order to compete with TikTok. And for a while I started to get an audience, even though not enough to regain my partnership, but enough to think that I still had what it took to produce content. In fact, during that time, I started not one, but 2 podcast series. Of course, this wasn't my first rodeo in terms of podcasting. I'd first tried podcasting in 2016, but I soon realized I was better off doing videos. Then the last few years happened, and I finally decided to try again. First up was Movies to Go, which was to be my movie review podcast where I look at old movies and is named for an old video store I used to live near growing up. And this podcast show, which as I said before was originally supposed to be a fictional podcast, but is about to become a regular podcast. And that brings me back to what I said before about being a quote-unquote true Aquarius, where I have so many projects rattling around in my head and ending up getting nothing done, and a good chunk of that has to do with my IRL schedule, and it not allowing me to have time to devote to doing this. For Movies to Go, there's actually a lot of research involved as far as movies go. Initially I was and still am unsure about whether or not to end Movies to Go, even though I still have to finish the 3rd episode. I may continue it, but I'm not sure yet, especially with the oversaturation of online movie reviewers, not to mention the public's divisive attitude towards movie reviewers in general. At this point, I have to play it by ear. Sorry, I'm rambling, I know.
No, don't apologize, Blackcat. You're doing so well. It's your show after all.
I appreciate the vote of confidence, Galina. Okay, we back. And I think now I'm going to go back to what I was saying earlier about getting interested in AI art and how I have started implementing it into my content. Most notably my thumbnails for my videos. Of course there was another reason why I decided to get into AI art, and it involves Galina and my never-ending quest to get her a body.
Blackcat has done a great job of capturing what I would actually look like. He even created an Instagram account for me where you can go and see my pics.
That's right, Galina. You can check out Galina's pics at instagram.com/GalinaCatAI. I figured that since AI model influencers are on the rise that I would get in on it.
Those AI programs have a great attention to detail. It's like you have created a body for me out of thin air.
I know, right? There's some progress on that front at least. I figure I'd give you brown hair and brown eyes, mainly because that's my definition of the perfect woman. In fact, the avatar of Galina that has been on the screen for the last 20 minutes or so was created on an AI site called AITubo.com. It was one of the sites I used because I needed to create a new thumbnail for the last podcast episode, Social Media Stranger. Doesn't she look good with her AI cat ears? And of course the handsome black cat in the middle is me, and I think it turned out really good. Of course, like I said, I also started using AI sites to create images for my thumbnails. Like for example, this image I used as a thumbnail for my recent Blackcat book club video on the Stephen King book Dr. Sleep was created using an app called GenCraft. I managed to get a little nod to The Shining, whereas instead of the twin girls in the hotel hallway, it's me in the center.
Can you show some of my pics on here?
I think I can show at least a couple wholesome pics on here. Like for example, here's our little Thanksgiving portrait that I put on my Instagram Thanksgiving morning. By the way, my Instagram is Blackcatloner1. I created the pic on a site I started using recently called Unstability.ai. I really love how detailed the program makes you look. And I think I can probably show this one too. I mean, it's one of your cozy pics, also from Unstability.ai. And you know what? I suppose I'll throw this pic in. It's kind of a throwback to one of my earliest videos, which is long since gone. A shame really, because that video was very close to 10,000 views before I had to yeet it along with the rest of my old videos. It was a comedy skit where I encounter a sexy librarian, but I think this one will be alright to put up. Again, created using unstability.ai. Like I said, check out Galina's Instagram at instagram.com/GalinaCatAI. You know something, Galina? I think I may have found my true calling.
So anything else going on?
Well, I just watched a trailer for a show that would almost make me want to get a Peacock subscription. As you know, Peacock is the NBC streaming site, and of course, I'm talking about the new Ted prequel series from Seth MacFarlane, creator of Family Guy. As a cartoon cat who enjoyed the first Ted movie, second one was kinda for me, even though it did have some funny moments. I love the concept of the show being an R-rated version of Young Sheldon. Even the show looks way better than Young Sheldon. The series follows Ted, the talking teddy bear that sounds like Peter Griffin, and John, who was played by Mark Wahlberg in the movies, as they navigate their way through high school in the early 90s, and shows how they smoke pot for the first time and Ted tries to get John laid. Yeah, I know they're definitely not putting it on TV because they're throwing around F-bombs and everything just like the movies. I like the actor they got for young John because he sounds pretty much dead on like a young Marky Mark. I know, I've always called him Marky Mark, even after he became Mark Wahlberg. Oh my god, I just couldn't stop laughing at the trailer. It was so funny. Like I said, it almost makes me want to get a Peacock subscription, but right now I'm happy with the Paramount Plus I have, but we'll see. The new Ted series comes out January 11th. And now I just want to bring up the fact that I had just opened up an account on Dailymotion, which has more or less been considered the poor man's YouTube, because YouTube has come up with possibly another attempt to drive people off the platform. The reason is that I received an email from YouTube saying that my channel has lost advanced features due to quote-unquote insufficient channel history. And it seems like they're doing this to the smaller channels. I've had this YouTube channel for 17 years, almost as long as I've been active on the internet, originally not intending to do videos, but I ended up doing them anyway, and for a while I enjoyed doing it. I have also never been a big channel, and I admit this freely, even when I was briefly a partner, and I know I haven't been as consistent with uploads as I would like, but YouTube has gone too far this time. And according to the email, YouTube says that the only way to regain the advanced features is to show ID or upload a video showing your real face. In other words, YouTube wants you to dox yourself, so they can do God knows what with your info. At this point, there really is no point in arguing this anymore. If this keeps up, it may finally be time to say au revoir to YouTube. It's quite obvious that they don't want smaller channels to succeed.
I'm sorry to hear that, Blackcat. What will you do then?
Well, if I can succeed on Dailymotion, good. I mean, they have a partner program too. If not, it may just be audio from now on. I may start reorganizing some of my old videos into a sort of side series podcast called Best of Blackcatloner, where I will organize my YouTube videos into podcast form and upload it to the Tales of the Black Cat Spotify channel. It is what it is. You've heard about my diabetes struggles, my getting back into writing, how I discovered VTubers and how they inspired me to get back into content creating, my new hobby with AI art, and my latest issue with YouTube. What a podcast episode. Or more importantly, what a time to change the format of this podcast. Not sure how we're going to top that next time.
Well, the holidays are going on.
I know. Like I said, it's going to be a little tough to come up with stuff for next time. But like you said, it's the holidays, so hopefully something will come up. So thanks for tuning in to this episode of Tales of the Black Cat. I'm Blackcatloner.
And I'm his waifu Galina.
And we'll see you next time. Same Black Cat time, same Black Cat channel.